Welcome to the Highway Tech Show, where we focus on insights and strategies and solve some of the top challenges in highway tech, reconstruction, and accidents with trucks, bikes, motorcycles, and more. Let's get started with the show.
John Grindy here.
And I'm John Steiner here.
We're the hosts of the Highway Tech Show. We talk to top leaders in OEM, commercial fleets, legal, and much, much more. Today, we're honored to have Sergeant John Kolter, who's seated in between us, and is part of the California Highway Patrol's elite multidisciplinary accident investigation team, or MAIT as it's termed, based out of Fresno, California. And a short introduction, I think, from Mr. Steiner.
So I'm John Steiner. I'm CEO and co-founder of Mechanica Scientific Services Corporation. I started with John Grindy, Mechanica, about 7 years ago after being with another firm for about 10. I've been in the highway crash reconstruction field, and I've been pretty involved with event data recorders since about when they first started, or was it going back to 2000?
2000, 90s, late 90s?
I published numerous peer-reviewed scientific papers on heavy vehicle event data recorders, and crash reconstruction. My co-founder is John Grindy.
Thank you, John. It's really nice to have a show where it's just John's on.
Yes.
John. Thank you. So, I worked with John Steiner back, and we started Mechanica back in 2014. I'd been working with John at another reconstruction firm, and then prior to that, I had 24 years on with the CHP. I've known Sergeant Kolter for 20 some odd years. Yeah, long time, very long time. So we've worked together on Southern Division in MAIT and the MAIT program as a whole. Most of that time, I even rode, spent 7 years as a motor. He doesn't like that, but that's always fun. Motors. That's a whole make other traffic officer respond. That's the right trick, right?
Yeah.
So, but I also worked at worked occasionally as a team leader when our sergeant at the time, who was out, he did a couple stints at after 9/11, so during the military stuff. So he was taking care of that. So, at any rate. Let's start our interview. Let's get going.
All right,
John.
So this episode is brought to you by Mechanica. Mechanica provides engineering, scientific analysis services to many different industries, including legal, automotive, commercial truck, and bus, manufacturing, the transportation industry, and a lot more. If it has wheels and rolls down a highway or a golf course, we have your back. Anything from golf carts to passenger vehicles to heavy truck and bus. We utilize cutting-edge tools, technologies, and methodologies to not only perform accident reconstruction and analyze crashes, but also to communicate our analysis clearly, concisely, and quickly to our valued clients. Mechanica Corp specializes in highway vehicle safety research and testing. We have a growing business in industrial testing and evaluation for our passenger vehicle, medium and heavy truck OEMs, as well as other manufacturers of highway safety related technologies. We offer in the litigation realm expert testimony and analysis on cases. So, if we can be of help, visit mechanicacorp.com. That's MECANICACORP, like papa.com. Or contact us to learn more about our services.
And I'd like to just do a shout out today to our media department, our forensic media team here at Mechanica. Jamie Cobb, Dave Gifford, and Claire Grimes for setting up our recording studios that we're in. Thanks a lot, guys. This is awesome. And it's in our headquarters. And again, check out our profiles at mechanicacorp.com. Thank you. So without further ado, Sergeant Kolter, we'll skip the formalities because I've known you too long.
Yes.
So
yes.
One of the things we talked about is, you're coming up on close to 25-ish?
25 years.
Yeah, on the Highway Patrol. So tell us a little bit about just overall in general the CHP.
I joined the Highway Patrol as a cadet in late '95, and I graduated in '96. Mm-hmm. Reported to West Los Angeles as a traffic officer, and spent first few years working the road in West Los Angeles. The fun area, had a lot of fun, great area. Worked a little bit in the Modesto area and went back to West LA, and I started doing MAIT work as an associate in 1998, primarily doing mechanical inspections. Right. Because prior to joining the Highway Patrol, I was an automobile technician for 10 plus years. And so they needed some assistance in looking at cars, from the mechanical aspect post-crash. So that's how I got started in MAIT, was doing mechanical inspections. And then I got to the team full-time in '03. Right. And I've been in MAIT ever since, both in Southern Division in Los Angeles and in Fresno and Central Division.
So now I know Steiner's always curious about how we do this. There's 8 divisions in the state.
8 divisions in the state.
But yet there's 9 teams?
Well, headquarters has their own.
Okay.
They have their own group of people
that
have the same training as we do. In fact, headquarters in Sacramento oversees the entire MAIT program.
Right.
We answer to them. We go to them for assistance. They provide. They arrange for training. They provide and arrange to get our equipment to us. They do a great job.
Budgeting.
They take care of all the budget stuff. Without them, we'd be 8 little islands.
Doing it separate, right?
Doing it separate. They keep us all in the straight and narrow.
So I know one of the things is, you brought some paperwork about the history in general of the MAIT program. Can you give us a rundown of that?
MAIT started in 1978, 1979. The department saw a need for more in-depth investigations. Mm-hmm. They found that certain crashes, not all, but certain required more time and energy and more attention to get to the underlying causes of what caused the crash. And so MAIT was formed in the late 70s, initially with 2 teams. One was in Southern Division in Los Angeles. One was in Northern Division, or in Valley Division out of Sacramento. And those 2 teams responded throughout the state. The program has eventually grown to all 8 divisions, has their own team now, and they're responsible for the responses in their divisions. The whole point of the program was to provide in-depth technical expertise, in-depth investigations, and assist the local areas and allied agencies with things that either the area doesn't have time mm-hmm. or expertise. Usually it's time. We have capable people in the field, but they're very busy. And we spend all of our time doing crashes and critical incidents. And so the whole point of the program ultimately is to get to the underlying causes of a crash and to try and address those causes to try and prevent those cases in the future.
Right.
Correct.
So how long did only 2 teams cover the entire state?
I mean, that I'm not sure. We worked with couple of the original people. The OGs, that were on the original teams, and those guys, they worked hard because think about it. You're based in Sacramento, and something happens in the very northern part of the state. It takes you hours to get there.
Yeah.
Or in Los Angeles, and you have to go out to Needles, out to the Arizona border or the Mexican border. Right. It takes hours, and these people would spend days, sometimes weeks at an area, just staying in hotels, doing crashes, similar to what the NTSB does now.
Right. So just to give some perspective for those that are watching that are not familiar with, so like I fail at East Coast geography. So, so to give some perspective, I mean, we are here sitting on the coast in Oxnard, California.
Right.
It's about 50 miles to the south, well, really to the east, to the south, down to LAX airport, down to Los Angeles proper.
Correct.
It's about 40 some odd miles up the coast of Santa Barbara.
Correct.
We're a solid 5 hours drive to San Jose and the Bay Area, and probably another solid 6 hours to get up to the far reaches of the Lost Coast, right? The Redwood Forest,
Sure.
Eureka, Humboldt Bay. Just to give you some perspective of how big the state is. If you're sitting in San Francisco, it's probably a solid, 4-hour drive up to Lake Tahoe?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Easy. It's 2.5.
Could be more depending on
traffic,
smoke, fires, closures, all that.
But just to give some perspective, that's why I was just kind of shocked. 2 teams.
Originally, it was 2 teams, and they expanded the program, thankfully, to incorporate all the 8 divisions, which is better for everybody.
Right.
Yeah, it's originally, and I remember, and I think you probably remember this too, they went from the original 2, then they bumped it, and they put an inland team in and a valley team in, or a central team in. Yeah. So there's kind of 4, and they realized Border needed it, which was San Diego area. So they put
Border Division,
and they finally went to Golden Gate and put in the Golden Gate Division, and then they went inland and northern.
So inland handles Riverside, the very southeast, out to the Arizona border.
Yes,
the entire inland
division is the biggest division in the state.
Okay,
they go up the east side of the Sierras. They go out to the Arizona border.
They go that far north.
They do because the Sierra Nevadas is a mountain range.
Quite a wall.
Is a wall to go through, especially in the winter. So Inland Division has a huge area, sparsely populated, but they have some pretty nasty stuff go on out there.
So Inland will handle leaf vining?
I think so, yeah.
You guys don't?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
No.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even know that. That's
so a lot of people probably have this idea of California of, it's just sunshine, but
no.
we have harsh summers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's 100 plus in the Central Valley, right? And then in the wintertime, we get everything from, we're spoiled here. Our cold is,
all the
69 degrees or 61. No. But you have to deal with everything from the Sierras and snow. And
we've had scenes in the snow.
Everything in between.
Actually, the coldest night I ever spent, was the call out
in Palmdale.
Because I wasn't ready for the cold
when
I first started.
It was
20? 20 degrees. It's colder outside than it was in your freezer. You could put a bottle of water out and it would freeze. And our instruments weren't working correctly or working very slowly. Yeah. I came up from Redondo Beach, and so I had my regular uniform. No, I had my regular uniform on. I'm just like, holy cow, it's cold up here.
Right.
And we all had to take turns sitting in the car to warm up and take turns out, because that's the coldest. But I've had scenes in the snow. We've had scenes, of course, in the Central Valley in the summer where it's 110. Mm-hmm. And as a team leader, once we get our instruments set up and the guys start working, my job is to make sure they're safe. And that means importance of rest, getting the breaks, water. Mm-hmm. I mean, when it's 100 degrees out, you drink and drink and drink, and you just sweat it out. And so
it's a dry heat around here.
Well, we've had officers that they get sick from the heat, and so my job is to watch them and make sure that they stay safe.
Right.
So that they can do their job.
Now, and in doing your job, it's kind of interesting how originally I had first met John Grindy going back probably a solid 15 years now.
Yeah, or more.
And doing, so from my background, I got into this because I wanted to go work for General Motors. Mm. And after college, realizing, even having a job offer, never crossed my mind. This whole but they're not here. I'd have to move somewhere else. And I just couldn't leave California. And I happened to find this little, I guess industry of crash reconstruction and forensics. And the rest is history. And in doing this job for some trucking clients, I happened to meet John Grindy at an off ramp, and asking, hey, is there any way I could do some measurements and photographs if I stay out of your way, keep y'all out of the photo, and I just,
do my thing.
You got the road closed.
Yeah.
And I think John Grindy made the comments like, we got to get data off of your client. That truck is your client. We got to get that.
I probably remember that case.
We're going to take it to the Freightliner dealership. And I think at that point, I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
we may have a better plan. And this is how this relationship started. And it's some frantic calls at 11 o'clock to in-house counsel, local counsel about they want to get data off the truck. And this is the very early days of big truck data.
Yes.
They want to take it to the Freightliner. We have already been through this. We know that, dealerships typically will have software set to clear everything. And if they don't get everything, you've got a problem. Client said, work with them, get them the data. And I said, and we'll get on scene. And that's kind of collaboration.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how it all started. And ultimately ended up meeting you up through Central California and collaborating in the same way.
We did some cases in Southern Division as well. We had a big rig crash that you wanted to get on scene. And I was good with it. As long as you help us download the truck, you can take all your photos. And as we get access to that data, we're good with it. And it's the collaboration's worked out well ever since.
Right. Because, from the early days of crash reconstruction, it's pretty safe to say, reconstruction isn't what it was.
Oh, no.
With all the data, with all the the tools, and there's so many things to talk about here, for our session here. But, even from when I first met John Grindy, I was just blown away by how the team conducted themselves, how you guys worked, and the cool toys you guys had. I mean, I remember.
I think we had that first Leica,
what was
Station 1
or
or
2. The Scan Station,
48-pound.
Scan Station 10 or something like that. It was a giant machine. But at the time, it was cutting edge for us.
Right. And
it was really new, but it took forever to scene. And one of the things I like to think about is physics haven't changed.
Right.
Laws of physics have not changed. What has changed is the technology. Back when we started, and when I started working on cars for a living, back the way in the 80s, there was very primitive computers that ran the engine, and they were really slow, and it was really clunky. Well, now the technology has just advanced, and when we started doing accident or crash reconstruction, the downloads for cars were GM, Ford, Chrysler. That was it, and it was really primitive stuff.
Right.
And it was it was a huge day when Toyota came on board.
Oh yeah, we love Toyota.
It was just
wonderful.
Like, Toyota is finally getting on board, and then of course the OEMs all followed after that. But what has changed is the technology, the scanning tools, drones now. Collection, the evidence collection or collection of data is what has changed, and car technology and truck technology is what's really changed a lot and changes almost daily.
Right. Yeah. So it kind of touches upon, and correct me if I'm wrong, but MAIT doesn't get called out to everything.
Oh no.
And so when you do get called out, there's quite a difference. And I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but for those more minor accidents where there might not be a fatality, your local area officers, CHP officers, their job is really document, one, render aid,
absolutely,
make sure everyone's okay, get the road clear, document what physical evidence they can, using CHP terminology. Get this all in the 555 form. Is that right?
The face pages of the crash. Yes.
The traffic collision report. And typically, there's not really a reconstruction or analysis done at this.
There's no reconstruction done because our policy states that only MAIT and MAIT has to approve all of it and has to review it. We do have associates that work at the areas that can do that work, but all their work has to be sent through us. That is not to say that the areas don't do technical follow-up. The areas... now, with the advent of getting data off cell phones and tablets and things like that, our area officers, each area office they're working on having people that specialize in this, writing warrants and collecting electronic data that we never hear about, but they're doing really good work in collecting that electronic data because it tells a lot about what's going on from a human factors perspective prior to the crash, especially if they're on their phone or whatever.
Right.
So the areas are doing that. We get involved in it as well when we get called out, but the areas do some of that, but they're not allowed to do speed calculations or things like that.
You guys get to do that.
We do that.
So it's really interesting, and I've just Grindy. I mean, both you guys. It just blows me away the amount of training you guys get. I mean, because again, going back to this idea that, one of my big mentors, I was telling you a little bit about him, was John Kirchhoff, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. And we have some great old photos of him where they used to do, vehicle inspections and measure crush with either like a crush jig.
Yep. I remember that.
Or one of the favorite ways I liked is they would put a kind of like that plastic
paper,
drop cloth.
Oh yes,
under the cars.
Yep.
And then using
a plumb bob.
Right, but they would lift the cars with
Go jacks.
Just jacks, but jack stands.
Yeah.
And then using a plumb bob on the plastic sheet, plot the structures and the crush and the damage 1-to-1, and you would have this huge 1-to-1.
Yep.
And then take pictures of it. That was CAD.
That was high tech.
Even going back to 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you guys.
I learned generic CAD.
Before AutoCAD.
Before it popped into AutoCAD.
Yep.
And it was type in a command, move the mouse, type in a command, move the mouse.
Wow.
It was a lot of type commands. It was a lot different. John, we were talking a little earlier about all this excess training. They're now training at the MAIT level, correct?
Yes.
AutoCAD.
There's three different beginning, intermediate, and advanced AutoCAD. That's part of the MAIT training. As you go through, there's intermediate crash investigation, advanced crash investigation, and then there's a TAR 1 and TAR 2, or
correct.
TCR now. In math and physics is an 80-hour course, and then there's three 24-hour blocks of AutoCAD, which back in the day we were doing things by hand.
Yeah, we're still drawing by pencil.
I have diagrams in our office, in our archives, dated to the late 80s and early 90s, where they were using drafting tables and doing it old school. I still have those.
Those are the curves. Those are the OG guys.
OG guys. I still have French curves in my kit of stuff.
So
wow,
it's pretty cool to look back and look at the change. We look at the change in reports, and where back in the day, in the 80s and early 90s, there was no cell phone data. There's no electronic data from cars. There's no drones. There's no surveillance footage. There's none of these things that we use now. And so the reports back then, they're fairly small or very short compared to what we're doing now.
Right.
Because everything now has electronic data. Everyone has a cell phone. There's surveillance video everywhere. And all of that gets incorporated into our reports. And therefore, it takes longer to do them.
Right. So I think you guys saw the introduction of the 3D scanners, the Leica scanners.
Yes.
How back then? I mean, in this industry, both in your world with the California Highway Patrol and the private industry where we live, it's common, right? It's the tape measure. But it's one thing with what the size they are now and the power they have, and as well as the power of the computers to process the data you gather was.
Oh yeah.
With the computers they were even 10, 50 years ago.
You'd have computers that would just lock up, and you're just like, oh, and we got to restart and hope the data is still there. The scanner itself was massive. I mean, it was a job.
I remember two of you. That's right.
It took two of us to get it out of the
car.
Or
a crane.
Yeah, it was, and it was looking at back injuries sometimes. So it's the way they are now. It's just like, wow, the technology is really advanced. That's the big change in the industry. It's not physics. It's the technology.
How you measure.
It's how you measure. It's how you collect data.
That's right.
That's all. That's the big change.
Right. And the fountains of data that are available.
Oh yeah.
The mass of influx of it is sometimes overwhelming too.
Right.
You need to manage it. I'm assuming most areas all have CDR tool. They all have
all the MAIT teams have the CDR tool. Yeah. The areas don't have it because in order to use it, you need to have a reconstruction background to interpret the data.
Gotcha.
Because getting data out of the car is one thing, but taking that data and looking at it, does it fit with your physical evidence on the roadway? Does it fit with the crash scenario? Or is there anomalies? And if so, what is it, and does it change your opinion of how the crash occurred?
That's really interesting. So a local area, even if they have the tool, if no one's going to do anything with the data, it's not downloaded.
It's actually, it's a double-edged sword. It's great. We have this data, and what we're afraid of is the areas giving the data to the DA without any vetting. And DA goes, oh, okay, the guy's doing X miles an hour, but it's really an anomaly.
Right.
It's the vehicle's in a yaw.
Right.
Or
the tire size is wrong.
Tire size is wrong. He's on a wet surface and hitting the gas. I mean, we've all used to do that in the patrol cars.
Yeah, just for
get
fun.
on wet pavement and just do a PR. Well, the speedometer's doing 20, 30 miles an hour, but you're not going anywhere. So the data data's there, but data needs to be vetted. Right. And so areas cannot download modules in cars. We do that, and that's actually the bulk of our workload now is the areas, and most importantly, the DAs are asking for this data. Because in reality, once it's been vetted, it's an unbiased witness to the crash.
Right.
Where we've seen some data that's just like, wow, this guy's doing that.
Wow.
And the DAs like it because it's not, as long as it's been vetted and it matches the physical evidence, it's
right.
another passenger in the car, but it has no dog in the fight.
Right.
It's unbiased.
So living in the trenches of looking at real world crashes, pulling EDR, HVDR data, you guys are living what is in the training, what is in the recommended practices and standards that are discussed ad nauseum at SAE about the data has to be vetted. The data has to be analyzed. The data doesn't stand by itself.
No, the data has to match. Say you get you figure out, the download tells you there's a speed change of 35, say. Well, does the car show delta V of 35 mile an hour damage, or is it 5? Well, there's a disparity there. We need to, we've had data where it's like, no, this isn't from this crash, and we can't use it. And so that's the difference. If you download it and you give it to the DA, another person from the outside or from a defense expert will go, it's not from this crash. And it's because it hasn't been vetted. It has to be vetted. It has to go through the physical, it has to match physical evidence. It has to match the collision scenario. It has to match the damage on the car. It should be consistent with witness statements, even involved party statements, unless they're not being totally forthcoming, which happens.
Right. So Mechanica's had obviously a lot of experience with event data recorders, heavy vehicle event data recorders. We're also into Burla, the infotainment stack, and Celebrite mobile device data. What has
we're doing that too. We have Burla data, or we have access to Burla data. We have people that can do the downloads. We have the kit to do so. The information is, again, that needs to be vetted as well, just like all the other evidence. Right. Sometimes there's not much there. Other times it's a plethora of data it's almost overwhelming how much data you can get.
Right.
So, we're doing a lot of cell phone data. And talking before this, I personally think cell phone data, or cell phones, are the most dangerous thing on the road. Driver distraction is a major issue. In all aspects of, from trucks to cars. You pull up to a stoplight and just stop and look around and see how many people are sitting on their phone.
Yeah.
And it's one thing if you're sitting at a table or at the airport and everyone's on their phone, that's one thing. But when you're in a moving car at 60, 70 miles an hour.
On an active road.
And on an open road, and your attention is devoted to your phone.
Even at a red light.
Oh, yeah. Bad things happen. And it's driver distraction is a major, major issue. Interesting.
Now, I'm curious with the EDRs, the Burla data, the cell phone data, maybe even more sticky in this question I'm curious about. You testify a lot on these cases. In terms of evidence, electronic evidence, evidentiary procedures with cell phone data, data sourced from Burla, or even the EDRs, any interesting experience, any interesting battles on not someone fighting to keep it out?
Oh, yeah, they try and keep it out. But we get our stuff through a search warrant. And once a search warrant is signed, I should say the majority of our data is obtained through search warrant. What we find is the suspects won't give us permission to look at their car.
Right.
The victims are all over it. Oh, yeah, find out. But the suspects are like, nah, you're not looking at my stuff. And I understand. So we get search warrants. So really, the legality of going in and getting data, that doesn't get challenged too much. They will. I've had attorneys argue validity of speeds. Well, that speed of X is not really correct. Well, in the old days, there was some variability in it. And again, a vetting of it. If the car's in a yaw, yeah, that speed may not be correct. Or the spinning tires or the car's airborne.
Correct.
But if he's going straight down the road, and it's not heavy braking or any other anomalies that that can happen, that speed's pretty good. And in the old days, it'd be caught off by a few miles an hour.
Right.
But some of the speeds we run into are so high that it's like, could it be off by a couple miles an hour? Yeah, I'll give you 2 or 3 miles an hour, but the guy's doing 130 miles an hour, so sure, we'll give you 125. I did a download not that long ago. A guy's doing 125 miles an hour in a 30.
Wow.
So it's like, what's to argue?
Wow.
And
Wow.
But the speed, we've seen speeds, the highest I think we got was 156.
7.
It was a Corvette.
The vet. 156.
156.
Clocked out.
We routinely see speeds well over 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
127 on a Dodge Charger recently. I've seen well over 100 routinely.
Wow.
What's funny, it's kind of sad, when the pandemic hit, the freeways opened up because everyone's locked down, and
Speeds went up.
We saw major crashes going up because the freeways are open for the first time, especially in LA, ever.
Right.
And
did you see did they see an increase in the mileage death rate?
Yeah.
A jump?
Yeah.
In 2020?
Yeah. Because of.
Isn't that incredible?
Because of, there's less miles being driven, but more people, but the speeds are greater.
Right.
So.
My humble opinion, living in Southern California most of my life, I always felt like, boy, there's some curves and there's some parts of the 101 and the 710 and those highways in and around downtown LA that no one's ever driven over 25 miles an hour. And maybe that was the issue, is all of a sudden last year in 2020,
they're able to go faster.
They're wide open.
Well, and there's, there's no freeway is perfectly smooth, and you go over bridges and things like that.
Right.
And they're fine if you're doing the speed limit.
Right.
And we've done casework where someone goes over a rise and a fall, vertical curve in a road, and it's like, okay, you can feel it. But when you do the download in the car and you find out how fast they're going, or we do speed calculations and you find out, and we'll do controlled testing where we'll go out and drive the road that our driver was on, and we'll go, okay, we'll do 45, 55. Okay, I can feel it. Well, and it's actually really good for court purposes, because you go into court and go, yeah, I didn't feel safe driving it faster than X, but our suspect was driving, 30 over that, where a minor bump at 55 is no big deal.
Right.
But you do it at 80, bad things can happen.
Right.
And do some bump steer, and then you have a lot of fun hanging on to the car.
Then it's a ride.
So you're kind of going back on something, I think an important theme here of collaboration, right? The complication of crash reconstruction now, and how many ways there are to measure and document physical evidence. But the MAIT group is not it's not just a bunch of investigating officers. It's actually a diverse group of individuals.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that. That's really interesting.
Each team has a supervisor, a sergeant, and a minimum of 2 officers that are trained in accident reconstruction or crash reconstruction. But every team has a Caltrans senior transportation engineer. He's a licensed professional engineer in California, a PE, and they're civil engineers. And they're assigned to our team full time, and every MAIT team has one. And We also have a motor carrier specialist assigned to every team as well. They conduct the mechanical inspections on cars and heavy trucks, plus they're trained and experts in motor carrier operations, so they can go through motor carrier records, terminal inspections,
hours of service, and e-logs and DLDs are a whole other topic.
It's
for another episode.
Yeah,
but
that's what gives us. That's the multidisciplinary aspect of this. In that we, if it's just a sergeant and a couple of officers, it's just that's that. There's no multidisciplinary aspect to that unless they happen to have an engineering degree, which we do have a few officers that are also engineers. But because we have a civil engineer assigned to the team and a motor carrier specialist assigned to the team, they're civilian employees, but they bring the multidisciplinary aspect to the program, and they're vital to the success of MAIT. We're fortunate in our training and travels around talking to other units and other investigators from all over the country. Not everybody is lucky as we are to have Caltrans engineers and motor carriers permanently assigned to us. So in the same room, kind of like what you guys have here, you have an engineer to look over your stuff and bounce ideas off of. You have CHP officers that have seen hundreds of, if not thousands of crashes, and you have a motor carrier specialist that can bring expertise to the mechanical aspect of investigations and motor carrier operations, and that's the multidisciplinary part, and it's actually super important.
That multidisciplinary part is a foundation to what John and I have built here, and what we've brought experts and people, someone like you who just have this dedication and this background, and so there's those that have the engineering background, and there's those that don't have an engineering degree, but it doesn't matter because of the years of training and experience that have the same weight, and there's some cases that only someone with an LEO or a law enforcement officer background can address and talk about.
In certain cases.
And so that is such a foundation to Mechanica. I mean, obviously, it's a big thing for what the CHP has built in MAIT, and it's a big thing for what we've built here at Mechanica.
Well, one of the things I always I try and remember is no one knows everything.
That's right.
And so everybody, even the newest member newest investigator to MAIT, brings their own set life experiences, their own road experiences, their own investigative experiences, and we can learn from them, regardless of tenure, whatever. Everyone has something to offer, but no one knows everything. That's why we're blessed to have a Caltrans engineer, a civil engineer in the room, because I've used terminology in a report and where an engineer goes, you might be wrong in using that word because it has specific engineering meaning, and you better be right on it. And so we're lucky to have that. And motor carrier specialists, if officers dip their toe into the mechanical inspections, and the motor carrier specialist will go, you might be wrong, and they'll correct us on that stuff. So we're lucky to have them there, and so it's the exchange of ideas and different areas of expertise, because no one knows everything. You could be a mechanical engineer, but you may not know everything there is to know about actually working on a car, or civil engineer. We don't know everything there is to know about roadway design. But a civil engineer who actually helps design freeways
might know a little
more than we do, for sure.
Right.
And one of the things I noticed that you've interchanged, and we have seen this just as a whole throughout the industry, is trend from accident to collision or crash. And NHTSA has, I think, was it NHTSA that came out and said that it should be called crash? So, question for you: how is the CHP going to change are they going to change the MAIT moniker to?
I don't think so.
MIC-T or something?
Some departments have done that.
Right.
I don't know. They haven't mentioned that, but we have adopted the NHTSA or the federal standards to crash, because really there is no such thing as an accident.
Right.
They all happen for a reason, and part of MAIT's job is to explore the underlying factors, pre, at, and post-crash, the human factors, the environmental factors, mechanical factors that may have contributed to the cause of this crash.
The Hadron matrix.
Yeah, and so our job is to try and, hey, this was a factor in this crash. What can we do as a department to try and prevent this tragedy from happening to somebody else?
Correct. Yeah, I think that's good because I know there's the change is coming, and people don't know. You know, I'm an accident reconstructionist. No, you're a crash reconstructionist now. Right. So there's a terminology.
It's just terminology.
It's a terminology change, and I just want to clarify for our audience that it's kind of at this point interchangeable, but I think we'll all trend to
going to be crash.
We have
made that transition in our forms, in our terminology, in our reports. We're referring to it as crash. Regarding the name change from Multidisciplinary Accident Investigation Team, that's above my pay grade. I don't know if they're going to make that change. But we'll see.
It's famous enough. Well, it's famous enough. I think that it would be kind of a sad thing to see go away because it's got some history. It's got a lot of history. I mean, it's got years of it. And
it was copied by, this program has been copied by other departments around the nation. Yeah. And have adopted what we do. And, you know, of course, I like to look at what other people do so we can learn how to improve our stuff. That includes people in the private sector. Other agencies are doing things that are pretty amazing. And so I like looking at their stuff, and they may be called MAIT, but they're doing this, you know, X, Y, and Z, and it's, that's pretty cool. We need to do that. Yeah. And so I like to try and keep an open mind and learn from each other.
Has the department gone to? I know you guys have got a few drones you're test running. Are they got Pix 4D? Are they working on some of those advanced?
There's drones in. We have test areas in Golden Gate Division. And in Border Division, they have people that are pilots and they've been drone operators for a long time, and they're very, very good at what they do. And they're basically the test bed for the rest of the state. Right. And the headquarters is using their input and how to steer the program so that we can all benefit from their knowledge.
Right. And I know because we have a lot of, how many pilots we got here?
I think 9.
He's not one of them, and I'm not one of them.
I'm not one either.
I'm not going to worry about.
I've actually been banned. Yeah, and that's a story for another time.
That would be me. I'd auger that thing right into the ground.
That's exactly. We got it on film too. It's actually pretty interesting.
My event that banned me is actually recorded. So
it's funny because part of our in Central Division, every division has an air operations section with real pilots who fly planes and helicopters, and so. You know, when one of our guys gets a pilot's license to fly a drone, the air ops guys are going, well, let's not get out of control here because you're not actually in it. Your life doesn't depend on it. We are pilots. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not get too excited. But we in the drone program we do air ops is involved in that because the FAA is involved. Yep. They apply. They have to abide by FAA rules, of course, and so input and information from air operations and headquarters and at the division levels is part of the vetting process for the drone program.
Right.
Very cool.
Very cool.
It's good to know that they've got them. You know.
Oh yeah, and the work that they're doing is amazing.
Yeah. Because we've seen we do it a lot with ours. Because we're using the drone imagery. They're modeling. We're using it for animation. Surfacing simulations. Well, everything's coming out of
the whole point really for us is to, again, like we talked about earlier, collecting data efficiently, and hopefully the goal is to even when these events occur, it's a major shutdown of roadways, and hundreds of thousands of people can be stuck, and it's really, really bad.
Yes.
And so the whole point is, hey, let's put a drone up, let's collect this data. Right. And the whole point is to try and expeditiously open freeways so people can get on their way to efficiently travel about the state. And the drone program, I think, is a great step in that direction. And the MAIT program and air operations is implementing that.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
You know, we've been going for a while now, and it's been a great discussion. I think a fun question for the end. We have a couple of interesting camps here at Mechanica. We actually, I think one thing that really distinguishes the Mechanica team from a lot of firms is we have a lot of gearheads here. And I got a really important question for you because I see some interesting stickers
tags on your
Hydro Flask. But bow tie, blue oval, or Mopar?
Let's put it to you like this. I have a 55 Chevy two-door sedan at home with a big block Chevy in it, 454. Wow. My better half has get this, a single owner 67 Chevelle. Her dad bought it brand new, and she drove it to high school.
Wow.
And so we have that Chevelle. It's not a really super high desirable LS, whatever.
Doesn't matter.
SS 454, it's not. It's got the 283 in it, but it's OG. It's all original. It's
bench seat, right?
Yeah, a bench seat. It needs restoration, but having a one owner, unraced, uncut Chevrolet Chevelle is amazing. Yeah. And that's the next project. That thing's getting restored so she can drive it to and from work, just like she did in high school.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool car.
Awesome.
So we know where his allegiance lies.
That's very good. Sergeant Kolter, it has been awesome to have you here.
It's our privilege to have you.
Really.
Thank you.
And
thank you for your years of service to the state of California.
And actually to both you guys for your years of service. And, for me personally, it has been an honor getting to know you back when you were working on the CHP force and getting to work with you. These topics we talk about in the end are not. They're really sad, especially in these where people are killed or hurt. And we all believe here if we could find a way to make all these highway crashes go away and people stop getting hurt, we would gladly find other things to work on. But the work you guys do. Super important.
That's one of the things I try and keep in mind, even though we do so many of them, is that when we get called to a scene, it's a tragedy for somebody. Then it's been my experience. It's been my experience in my own life. I had a family member, when I was a kid, that was killed in a crash, and I've had friends that have died in crashes, and it devastates families. It's a tragedy. It ruins marriages. There's people who were the best of friends that will never speak again. Not to mention the legal ramifications, but it truly is a tragedy, and it's sad for everybody involved.
Yep.
And our job is to hopefully give families closure, to get answers that they need, and ultimately to recover damages if that's the case, to hold people accountable if they make mistakes or drink and drive or whatever, to see that they're held to answer.
Right.
The only way we can do that is to produce a quality report, uncovering all the evidence, applying the evidence correctly to the crash, and getting accurate answers that can be ultimately presented to the trier of fact, which is the judge and jury.
Right. That's right. Right. Well, again, thanks for all your for your years of service, and thanks for coming out to hang out with us.
Coming actually live at our studio.
Yes.
Any other questions from the audience for us or for Sergeant Kolter? Please reach out. We'll have our contact information down below. And thanks for tuning in.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye
take
for
care.
now.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching and listening to the Highway Tech Show. Take action with what you've gotten today. And if you want to never miss a show, make sure to go to highwaytechshow.com.